Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today we are back with episode 121 of Podcast 2 for 1, which I think it means we're at the halfway point. I'm not quite sure. Right? 2, 4, 1,
Well, we need it would be like a
120.
podcast and a half. It's an odd number, so.
Well, I mean, I think like
completely even.
Yeah. Anyway, if you didn't know, and I bet you didn't, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course special guest appearances throughout the year. Kapow. And if you haven't, we would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on all podcast services. YouTube.com/2for1 Studios, the best place to consume the content. There we have Podcast 2 for 1 every week. And of course, we have 2 for 1 Joe Live every Monday, where we bring the news that we think you care about. I think this upcoming Monday, I'll be out of it, but I think Luke and Joe will be taking over. So you have that to look forward to. There's been a lot of juicy little things happening in the nerdosphere, so watch out for that one. But, Daniel, today we are talking Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then Daniel is telling me to keep going because things are happening. Let me say this. The podcast started on Star Wars. We started with The Mandalorian Episode 1, Season 1. And Daniel's back, so now I don't have to keep filibustering. I was telling our listeners, Daniel, that Podcast 2 for 1 started on Star Wars. Like, of course, we talk a lot of Marvel, we talk a lot of DC, but I feel like our first love might be Star Wars more so than the others. At least on a movie level, at least.
100%. I mean, it started with, I think most of our beginning podcasts were Mandalorian, and then Rise of Skywalker was right after that. You know,
and Last Jedi, the last Jedi debate.
Yes. No, we did. Yeah. So I mean, like, definitely. I mean, I think first 10 or 12 podcasts were just all Star Wars, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we may have done a Witcher in there, but still.
Yeah, exactly. So I think those first, 2.5 years ago, I mean, there was been rumblings for Obi-Wan Kenobi movie or something then, and we always kind of suspected that it was going to happen. Like, I don't think either one of us was like, no, it's not going to happen. I think we were always kind of like, no, when is it going to happen? And of course, we had it finally announced. We had, Kathleen Kennedy on the stage, and then Ian McGregor coming back, and then we got the news that Hayden Christensen was coming back as Darth Vader, and there's going to be a rematch. It's the last time we've seen them together since Episode 3. 15 or 20 years ago, probably 20 years ago. Oh my gosh. And so, it's a big deal for us Star Wars fans. And so, the last 6 or 7 weeks or so, as this show has been going on, we've been talking privately a little bit. We've been talking with Travis. We've been, kind of looking at the internet stratosphere. And I have been kind of wondering or thinking how this pod would go. Because I think it's going to be kind of a mix of everything in some ways. And I have a feeling I'm going to come out on it a little bit better than you, but not much better. And I think I have some rose-colored Star Wars glasses on. But anyway, I want your general thoughts. I want to know what you thought of the first season, because there could be a season 2. And when money is around, money talks. So what did you think of Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Overall, while I thought there was some really cool moments, especially towards the end, and some really just cool character moments, I think, and stuff that, like, you wish we had gotten in the movies, or we had gotten almost in Episode 3 maybe, but overall I'm pretty disappointed. And it's not because it's a bad show, it's because it's a fine show. It's fine. Okay, it's not It's not horrible, but it's not great. And that, to me, is like a huge missed opportunity. And, I've been wondering recently, I'm like, is part of this me starting to, like, become the older generation that just is grumpy about the new generation of Star Wars movies and stuff? Is Is this me kind of aging out a little bit of like being like of the modern stuff feeling relevant to me? But yeah, I just overall it felt like a missed opportunity for something that could have been like that could have potentially been like the greatest Star Wars story, you know, and I think it would have been better in a movie it could have been the best movie we'd ever had in Star Wars, I think, if they did it right. And that's just a little disappointing to me.
Yeah, okay. I think a couple things. One, I think you're right. I mean, I've been saying this. I think we've all been saying this, at least in our own little group. This should have been a movie, 100%. And because of now the Disney Plus machine, it's all these things have been extrapolated. My mic's going out.
It's that time of the podcast when it goes out. You know,
It is.
Ritual. Wouldn't be a podcast if Donovan's mic didn't start
fucking up.
being
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, cool. So here's the thing. I think we've been saying it for a long time now that this should have been a movie condensed down to 6 episodes down to an hour and 40. I think that definitely rings true, especially after watching the episodes. And then the big thing, what's up? Oh, Daniel's getting a phone call. I'll keep going. I think the big thing, to Daniel's point, is there's all kinds of technical difficulties this episode. I think the big thing that is essentially it could have been a movie, could have been condensed down. But the other thing that you kind of pointed out, Daniel, was the fact that you said, "Are you aging out of Star Wars?" I don't think we are. I don't think we are aging out of Star Wars. I mean, look at The Mandalorian. I mean, that was only 2.5 years ago. We didn't like just completely change our mindset on Star Wars 2.5 years ago. That come in and it kind of blew our socks off, right? And even in Mando season 2, I felt like blew our socks off even more. And the big thing there is, I'm getting a phone call too. Man, oh man.
Sorry, that was my son's daycare. I had to make sure there was no emergencies.
It's okay. Literally, Cameron just called me too. So it's been a podcast.
It has. Guys, leave us alone. We're trying to talk about Kenobi. God damn it.
I was telling them that A, I think it should have been a movie, and B, I don't think we've aged out of Star Wars. I was telling them, it was only 2 years ago that we had Mandalorian season 1 and season 2, and those gave us some of the best Star Wars moments in ever. And even and yes, Boba Fett come out, and now we have Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think it's not that. I think it's just the leadership, and it's the people who are running or writing these shows. And you look at Mando 1 and 2, you had Favreau, but really you had also Filoni there. It's like Favreau's like this ping pong, and it can go really either way kind of thing. And like he's great, in general. But everyone needs like guardrails.
Yes.
So the big thing is
these people do.
Yes, but like you have someone then you have Favreau on Boba Fett by himself, and granted, Filoni.
There's no Kevin Feige of Star Wars in terms of being dedicated to the lore and the world building, right? I think Kathleen Kennedy is in the same role, but it does not feel like she is doing what Kevin is doing, right? No. Like she's the executive producer, but Kevin is like in the weeds with everything, with the stories, with the plot, with all of that. Like that's a huge concern to him, is making that stuff good. And I feel like that's kind of what we're missing with Star Wars, is someone at the executive level in that role.
Yes. I mean, and again, you can't tell the story of Hollywood without talking about the story of Kathleen Kennedy, because she is a huge, huge producer in Hollywood.
Yes.
She's given me some of my favorite pieces of entertainment of all time. But, I think this even goes into I'm not even sure it's Kathleen's problem anymore. I know that she is the one that's producing things, but it really feels like it's just that there's just some people in there on the writer level and that just doesn't understand what we want or what we need as Star Wars people. And again, there's a lot I enjoyed about the show. I mean, I
Yes.
think ultimately, I didn't really say what I said about it, but it did enough for me. I just think that it could have been a 10 out of 10 movie. Easily.
Yes.
Easily.
11 out of 10.
Easily.
And
I mean,
and you
yeah,
know, going off my comments about am I aging out, like I think that's mostly coming from. So let's just talk about Leia in this show, her plot
sure.
line. It was awful. Like not the actress, she was great.
She
But
was.
everything she was given to do was horrible. It was not. It felt like Spy Kids at times with the like things that are like this or like I don't know, like a young like a family friendly adventure movie. You know, the Robinsons the go to like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or something. I don't know. It just felt like here's a kid that's apparently 10 years old. She did not look it, but apparently the actress is 10 years old in real life. So I guess.
Really? Holy crap.
Yeah, because we were like, no way, no way. And my wife and
She's,
I,
I
and
thought she was
she
way younger.
is, yeah. But just the way they used her, anytime there was action scenes with her, it was like when the bad guys try to kidnap her in the beginning and she's evading them,
Yeah.
like, and they're
Yeah.
just like running into clotheslines of like branches and stumbling on nothing, and it just feels like a spoof at moments in those moments. And I think that they tied the Leia storyline so deep into the plot that anytime that would come up in any sort of meaningful way, it was just like my eyes wanted to roll into the back of my brain. You know what I mean? It just felt like forced and unrealistic. It didn't feel real to the world. You know what I mean? I know, like it didn't feel realistic in our world. I don't care about that, but it didn't feel like it fit in Star Wars how they were writing her and making her do things.
Well, yeah, I mean, kids are, they're tricky enough, but you got to have kids consistent and not, there are personalities that you establish in the beginning when they first introduced cannot then bend to match what you need for the plot to happen. A good example of that is she starts out and she's obviously they're setting up her as Princess Leia. She's smart and she's thoughtful and she has this political savviness
Rebellious
to her, right?
nature runs
Rebellious
away,
nature.
you know.
Yeah, but then like in episode 2, I believe, it's like they're running like she like doesn't trust Obi-Wan Kenobi all of a sudden and she like, who are you? And she's
Yes.
like and she's running away and that kind of stuff. And it's like this isn't really like the smart kid you were an hour ago. Like the
No.
writers are doing things to make plot happen, which is
Yes.
just
And it felt
like
like the only reason that happened was so he could use the force to catch her from falling. You know what I
yes,
mean? Like that's the
yes,
only reason that they made that happen. They're like, "Oh, but Kenobi needs to use the force here." And it
yes.
just felt
And another example is
not
like in
good.
episode 3 when which we can talk about some of this stuff like especially the Vader stuff more,
Yes.
but episode 3 when Vader like is dragging Obi-Wan through
Yes.
the
Fire.
sands and the fire,
Yeah.
which on paper is pretty metal. Like
Yes.
dragging him through paper.
I love the in general, like in concept, Vader making Obi-Wan trying to kill Obi-Wan the same way that he was
Yeah.
maimed.
That's
Yes,
again,
yes.
that's pretty metal. But then you have the fire, like he gets away and like it's just like he could blow the fire out or he could
And
grab
the
like you
fire
said
just gets
earlier.
bigger, and it's like, oh no,
Yes.
the fire is way too big for me now. If it was a little shorter, I could get him, but
Yeah.
it's too
And
tall.
I know they've mentioned like the writers and even Hayden Christensen, like in this moment he's toying with him, but he's not to the place where he would let him go. Like it's the
No.
first time he's seen him, he would want him the
Yes.
most at that time. Like he doesn't know his power set, he doesn't know X, Y, and Z. He wants him now. So it's like
Yes.
I things like that when they feel contrived for plot, that's where
Yes.
the most of the
Yes.
issues come for the show. Now, I will say
100%.
Ian McGregor and even Hayden both are killing it. Like
Yeah,
like
I
and
agree.
but then like everything every time Ian talks, I'm like, yes, like I could just watch him stare at a blank wall and I'd be probably happy with it. But then you
Agreed.
have
Yeah.
like in the first episode and even is it in Riva or is it Revan? Riven? Reva?
Reva,
Reva,
something like that.
you
Yeah.
had and like it's really she's not really a bad actress. I just feel like they gave her like a
No,
which
she's
let
not.
me table that because that's a big conversation. But then you
Yeah.
have people like the butcher guy in episode 1 that feels
Huh.
very out of
He
place in
showed
Star
back up in
Wars.
episode 6.
He
He made
did,
another appearance.
and it's just like these guys feel like bottom tier TV actors, and it's Star Wars. Like
Yes.
again, like just like Han
Yes.
Solo. Like Han Solo is a good movie, but it needs to be a great movie because it's Star Wars.
Yes. I think
So
Han Solo was actually better than this overall in terms of just feeling coherent in the world. And I think
it
that's for
was.
me just like all I wanted from the show was Kenobi and Anakin. I just shove everything out. Why?
Yeah,
I mean, and this is what it feels like. It feels like, oh no, but we want to make this. We want to target young kids with this too. And like,
and check off
I
particular
get people
boxes.
always
Yes.
make that. People always make the argument. Well, George Lucas made Star Wars for kids. It's always been for kids, and that was his big. That was his big like rebuttal to like all the prequels criticism, right? He's like, this is for kids, so shut up,
Yeah.
basically. But and there was so much in those prequels and stuff that kids could enjoy. I died over them as a kid. Like I was just like,
Yes.
just
100%.
like pour it in, like just inject it into my veins forever. Like that's what I want.
Yes.
I wanted to live in those worlds, but they did not feel like this. Like they felt so like they felt like there was a world that was built, this imaginary like politics and all this stuff, and it felt true to itself. It felt consistent with itself, and that's where like there's ways to do kid plots well in shows. Okay, there's been examples of this happening in TV. I'm blanking on any right now, but I know there has been, and it just felt like this was
Baby Yoda. There you go.
yeah. I mean, and
Pretty
luckily
good.
he
Pretty
doesn't
solid.
talk. I think that's helpful. But
It's
like,
super helpful.
I mean, it just feels like they just phoned it in. Oh, hey, we need a Leia plot. Can we like get the writer's assistant to write us a quick Leia plot? Because I mean,
I don't, I really don't, I don't really think so. Like, I actually, whenever that first episode kicked in and they were kind of like, he's going to have to take care of Leia, I kind of like that idea, essentially. Like, I mean, it kind of started creating some plot holes, which I do feel like they kind of put a
yes,
button on some of these at the end of it, at least. Like, well, some of these things are addressed that we were kind of having issues with, which I appreciated. But I mean, I think part of it though is the inability for some of these writers or people to be like, look, Obi-Wan is on Tatooine. He's 10 years in. Luke and Leia are 10 years old.
yes,
And since they're there, we have to use them in some way. And it's like,
yes,
you're already stretching it a little bit, just having
yes,
Obi-Wan do adventures in between this time. But that can actually work pretty well because there's a big stretch there. But when you have to start including legacy characters, I'm not talking Darth Vader. When you're
right.
including Leia and or the Organas and Luke, and I did like seeing Uncle Owen. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing Joe Egerton
Yeah,
back as Uncle
he was
Owen,
great
just
as Uncle Owen.
because
He was
he
one of
was
the
like,
better like actors in the show, probably too.
yeah, it just time
Outside of
wise, it
Kenobi, I
feels
mean.
great because he was in episode 3 for half a second, and now he gets to be older and be
And
in the
he's like
show.
appropriately older in real life for the
Yeah,
time period. It's great.
yeah,
It's
it's
great.
kind of great how that works out. But they shouldn't. They didn't need Luke there. I mean, it's
No.
fine seeing him like cuck over Luke through the thing, like watching
Yeah,
him.
sure.
That's fine. But you don't need
Well,
to include Luke in danger at the end because we already know that Luke will not die in it.
Oh, yes, and that's
We,
part of the problem with
yeah,
all these kids is the stakes feel meaningless, and part of the problem with the whole show is there are no real stakes.
yeah. The stakes on this, like, that's the thing. When you do a prequel and you know the outcome, the stakes have to be. It's not even like, hey, it
Personal,
has to be
internal.
personal and internal. And the big thing is, what does the audience not know that can
Yes, and
repaint things? And yes, we didn't know that him and Leia went on an adventure, all these other kind of things. But what's way cooler in that, which we got in a way, is the inner turmoil of him dealing with the PTSD of Anakin. Like looking out on a
yes,
bird's eye view, I feel like they were trying to go for. I mean, even my mug says it. Only a master of evil, Darth, right? So like at the end of the show, he calls him Darth. He's calling
yeah,
him Anakin in the beginning. It's kind of like,
yeah,
okay, he's accepting that Anakin is truly dead, right?
right.
Which even kind of repaints that line in A New Hope, where he's
It
like,
does. Yes,
Anakin's your father, and Darth Vader killed your father, which is kind of like that was always like
I
a plot
liked
hole
that.
kind of thing, which I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they
do
kind of
too.
made that. But the show, 100%, was when Obi-Wan is on that Tatooine-like planet. Maybe it was no, whatever it was,
Yes,
and
yeah.
he
It was
sees
it was
Hayden Christensen. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And that look, that's the show. It's
Here
Obi-Wan on a mission, and then Anakin's
yes.
after him, but it's on something that's like important to the rebellion.
Here
And
is the sorry, go ahead. I'm
no,
not
as I
trying to
say,
cut you off.
and the show is just him dealing with that at the same time, their paths converging into a final
Yes.
battle. It doesn't have to be like peppered through. Like, I mean, am I upset I got them meeting multiple times? No, I'm not upset about it. But there's a way to do it where there's just a better way of doing it. I mean, episode
Yes.
5, like the movie could like there's a version where you take episode 5 and you use the flashback stuff and you use those as like you make like a 2-hour movie but put all the other stuff in between those flashbacks.
Listen, I've got the movie pitch, and maybe you can make it
Do
a
it.
series too. Okay, Qui-Gon shows up at the end. It's cool, but it's wasted. The show should have opened up on a guilt-ridden Obi-Wan trying to commune with his master, not really fucking with Luke. I mean, maybe we get one shot of him like looking over it, but like that's as much as he's involved, right? And
Yeah.
we get the shot
Yeah.
of Luke driving on the house, whatever the fuck. But the show is him wrestling with his guilt with what happened with Anakin. Like he is like a guilt-ridden, anxiety-ridden. Like I don't think he has a job. I think he's living out in the fucking desert trying to live off the land. Like
Yes.
like in like sweaty,
Like a hermit.
Yes, and like and pleading with Qui-Gon, pleading to see Qui-Gon. He needs his master. He needs help. He
Yeah.
needs, and he's just like going into like almost panic attacks. And then, yes, somehow I'm not clear on how the plot goes as far as how he gets off planet, whatever. Maybe he just learns that that Vader survived, and that's what gets him off planet. But the penultimate episode, how Obi-Wan and what happens in episode 6 when he kind of goes Super Saiyan or whatever, that needs to happen after he finally sees Qui-Gon. That needs to be this breakdown moment where he's at his lowest point, and we think, we obviously know he's going to survive, but is he ever going to get closure? Is he ever going to feel peace again for what happened with Anakin? And then Qui-Gon meets with him and shares with him some really beautiful like knowledge or lesson kind of thing. And that is what allows Obi-Wan to like be himself again and use the Force. I think he shouldn't have used the Force till the end. I think he should have been forceless until the final episode. I really do. I think, and maybe he pulls out his lightsaber a couple times, but it looks like, make him do it like episode A New Hope if you want. Like he looks rusty, and I just feel like that is the perfect way to do this for me, because it's all about the internal conflict. It's all about the interpersonal relationships and how we know Vader survives. We know Obi-Wan survives, but do we know if Obi-Wan ever felt peace about his role in Vader's creation? Do we ever know that Obi-Wan was able to like believe in himself again after everything that happened under his watch? Basically, that is how you do a show like this. That is what you focus on. And I think
he wrote a better show ultimately. And I think a couple things, I'll talking about this. One, I think that they were trying, I think that was definitely in the writer's room, that sentiment. And they tried, and like I do love that moment when he's like that dialogue exchange, and like Hayden and Ian there, that's great.
When he's got his mask sliced off.
Yes, that's
it's
fantastic.
The best part of the show. The best part of the show is that moment,
and it's great, and like that's kind of like, but the problem is that, and granted, you do get a little bit of it throughout the show. Maybe I need to watch it all back to back to back, but I feel like they should have brought it to the forefront and had him suffer PTSD more. And things were like, it never felt like it was, it never debilitated him in the moment that caused physical or someone else pain. It should have been something that like, because of his internal failure, or what he thinks is his internal failure, it should have caused the mission to fuck up, or it should have caused whatever. He always kind of got away. They always kind of succeeded in a way, right?
Like, yes.
Like in terms of like what his role in the situation was, like that one lady died who, whatever, in episode 4, but like it wasn't because of Obi-Wan, it was because of just other circumstances. You know what I'm saying? Like
the undercover officer.
Yes, yeah,
and it was so okay. I have such a big problem with that too, because it's like they're making their escape, and she's like in her last stand and like helping them get away or whatever, and then he just walks right back in and gives himself up. Like it makes her death and sacrifice almost pointless. It's like, oh, she sacrificed to let you get away, but you're just gonna go turn yourself in now. And I get like he's doing that to protect everyone else, but like it just felt that moment felt very contrived. Like, let's introduce a new character in episode 2 and really try to make you like her. She's from Game of Thrones. That's what I recognize her from. She's one of the
you're right.
From the other place.
It was Pedro Pascal's wife, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I believe so. Yes.
I forgot until just now. I mean, another big issue though is because they wanted the Leia Luke plot is setting it 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, and I still think there's a plot hole that he didn't know that Darth was alive. Like, I
kind of didn't have an issue with that.
I mean, it's weird that he's like, I mean,
he didn't know that Anakin survived the Mustafar. He thought he left him for dead. He never knew that the Emperor showed up. You know what I mean? And he was already Darth Vader at that point. He had already, Yoda had called him that.
But remember in the holocron, that whenever Yoda and Obi-Wan are there at the holocron, he says Darth Vader rise to Anakin. And then he watches Anakin slaughter all these kids. Like, so he should know Anakin is Darth. And he's
right, but he doesn't know either of them survived. I think if he's...
But in 10 years,
in my version, where he's holed up as a hermit and has no contact with the outside world, that works. I think it's like,
I guess so.
That to me worked. It was just like, okay, like, you know, Vader's been in different parts of the galaxies being Vader and just hasn't shown up back to Tatooine. And so, like, if he's really cut himself off from like everything to protect himself, it makes sense to me that he just would assume when he left Anakin on the ground, like bleeding and burning to death, that it was over. You know what I mean?
You're making me change my mind. I guess it is Tatooine. They've always felt separated from the rest of the galaxy, and also
Tatooine's on the outer rim. You know, and they don't make that clear enough most of the time. But
and also I guess because we just go there so fucking much in Star Wars that I feel like it's in the center of the galaxy sometimes. You're right.
It is in the center of the writers' room galaxy. That's for sure.
But I mean, like, look. I think I told you this. Whenever, you know, and they sees Hayden there in the desert, that's the show. And when they're on
why
screen,
didn't we get that more?
That's electric. Yeah, like seeing more.
I was expecting that to keep happening.
Me too, 100%. And
or that, like, once Vader knows Obi-Wan's alive, like, fucking Kylo Ren yourself, like, project yourself to Obi-Wan. But be in the robe and have the fucked up face, but he's like talking. Like, he doesn't have to have the thing because he's using the Force to like project himself. Like,
I mean, you'd explain that it would have to be like they're a Force dyad at that point, but like also
I guess whatever.
But more lore. But
listen, they make up power. They make up new powers for the Force all the time. This would not be that hard to rationalize, probably.
You know what's also weird? They didn't have Duel of the Fates or Battle of the Heroes at all in the show, and they have it in the trailer.
Even like homages to it.
They have it in the trailer.
Yes.
It's like, why do that to us? I don't get that.
I know.
That's shitty. Like
that's like one of the most universally agreed good things about the prequels was like no one debated that the music was fucking awesome. You know what I mean? Like like the Duel of the Fates. I don't care how you feel about Darth Maul or Qui-Gon. Like the Duel of the Fates was like fucking badass, and that battle between them is still amazing.
I mean, it's still the best. Wait, which one? Duel of the Fates or Battle of the Heroes?
Is Battle of the Heroes episode 3?
Yeah, that's episode 3.
I think episode 3's lightsaber fight is better, but I think the Duel of the Fates is a better song. Like, it's a better.
I agree. Like,
Like,
I mean, I mean, I don't know why I asked, because both of those is probably 1 and number 2, however you want to cut it, best Star Wars fights ever. So and that's the thing too. Like they're going into this show, going off of the Mustafar fight, which is it's truly a Shakespearean epic in space. Like it's a dance. A space opera. Yes, it's a dance.
How like Anakin's jumping around and throwing stuff and they're all twirling. Like it looks like a dance in a cool, and like that's correct to the lore. Like lightsaber, like how you use a lightsaber. There's several different lightsaber like fighting styles, but it's all very like organic and like you're supposed to flow. You know, it's not this just like you know, it's supposed to be this like dance like thing, you know, like that's how the books are written, you know, like that's how the prequels it really looks like when they're fighting. Like they twirl around and hit a blaster back like from behind, like, and I'll just say, like, bringing up lightsaber fights, I was not really impressed with this one. Like, I didn't think every show now, I feel like we have to set all of these moments at nighttime, so CG's cheaper. I feel like is just a running theme between Marvel shows and Star Wars shows. There's too many night scenes at like big moments, and like I get like it looks cool to see a lightsaber glow, but whatever. And I just felt like it was fine, but like honestly, I felt like Vader. I didn't like the way he was kind of choreographed and kind of like I really wish they had done. That there's some really great comics with Vader, like some really great ones, and there's this one panel that gets shared a lot of like him being surrounded by like rebel troopers, and they're like, give up, Darth, you're surrounded, and he's like, I'm only surrounded by fear and dead men, and then he like fucks like this entire like hundreds of people up, and it's just like, and he's like a tank, you know what I mean? He's like, he pulls you and he slices you in half, you come up and hit him, he doesn't move. You know what I mean? Because he's like an android Iron Man, almost like level tank guy.
Right.
And I just felt like I didn't see that in the way he moved. He felt like a guy in a costume. You know what I mean? I wish it had been this like, I wish it had been more like the final battle with Thanos, with like Captain America and Thor, where it's like they do some damage, but he's fucking Thanos, and he's like, until they still can't do it, like until like what more stuff has to happen. The heroes all have to come back to eventually beat Thanos because he's that fucking powerful. That's what I want in Darth. Like that's how he's written in terms of like books and lore and background, and like how much people are afraid of him in the movies and stuff. Like that's what I want. And I just felt like, again, it just was like, okay, it's fine, but like this could have been the best lightsaber fight in history. Like, why didn't you try to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think even though I don't agree with the sentiment, I think that they feel like they're tied between this place of like when they got to bridge episode 3 and episode 4, and I feel like in that respect they did a decent job of doing that. But I agree with you what you said before in private, where we don't have to take that A New Hope battle as canon. Like that was 1977.
It was based on budgets,
and they had two really old
technology
guys
of the time.
Yes, I mean, and Ian or what is it? What
they
his
didn't
name?
know
McGinnis. He was really old, when they did that. So
and Vader was not. There was no one had made Vader Luke's father when New Hope was done. That was done, but then they were writing Empire Strikes Back. So like I feel like we need to acknowledge that like the original series was a really good, but it was also a product of its time, and there are things about that we need to evolve, that Lucas did evolve. Now maybe we don't do it exactly like Lucas did it. Maybe we we have some prosthetic, like people actually in like alien prosthetic suits, but maybe let's CGI the mouth when like the mole man can only do this. And he's like doing these really long, complex sentences, because that just feel like I'm just like, this looks dumb. This just looks dumb, and like it looks like, honestly, you know what it looked like? It looked like early Doctor Who, like that's what it reminded me.
That's really
of.
bad. Early Doctor Who is bad. Okay, let's talk about Reva real quick. Reva, I can never say her name. Like there was some interesting conversation between us whenever the first episode dropped about. It felt like they were prepping her or even the cast about potential backlash beforehand, which is somewhat expected. I mean, when you take on a role like this and you're a minority or whatever, then, that's expected on some level.
People of color in Star Wars get abused, and that's a really, really sad thing, but it's also a fact. And that's, I mean,
it is, and it's unfortunate.
People of color in lots of places get abused, and that this is not unique. Star Wars is not unique in this, but it is consistent.
It's not, but also, I don't think anyone was upset with Lando Calrissian in the original trilogy, and that was the 70s and early 80s, because
but we didn't have the internet. If we had the internet, he probably would have gotten the same amount of racial abuse.
You may be totally right, but I don't think. But even then, like I don't think anyone goes back and like even in Rise of Skywalker, nobody was upset about Lando Calrissian in that movie, and I feel like at least for me, has nothing to do with her race or gender or whatever. It has
Right.
everything to do with it felt like a contrived plot device. And like
Yes.
I feel like they may have been like, oh, she's like the other mirror image of Anakin. She's someone who, on the dark side because of something Anakin did. I did like the twist with her that she was actually trying to kill Anakin, even though I felt like it was
It didn't
kind
make
of
sense to
almost
me.
it was yeah, as I'm saying, I like that. I like the idea in theory, but again, I feel like she was being almost like she was too evil. There should have been something to set up
Yes.
that she was playing both sides, like she
She
well,
was the woman just murdering people in the first episode
exactly,
just because she was in a mood. You know what I mean? That
exactly,
that doesn't feel consistent with I'm only doing this to kill Vader kind of
yes,
logic.
exactly. And I get she's the dark side, but there's a way of doing it where like the Sixth Sense, where when you retroactively go back and watch it, and you're like, oh wait,
Yeah.
she was doing bad things, but she wasn't doing
As bad as she could, or she was holding back.
exactly
There was
or
something part of her
something.
holding back.
Yes, or
And,
something that but
and I'll say,
yeah,
yeah, like,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
you're good. No, you're good. You're good.
I'm saying, yeah, I thought she was one of the better actors in the show. I really
Hmm.
did. Like, I felt like her facial
I agree.
expressions, her nonverbal stuff, some of the best. And I think it's so unfortunate that her writing was not good for the most part. And I feel like, I feel like what would have been more interesting is for Obi-Wan to somehow turn her against Vader towards the end,
Yes.
rather than her being all along, this kind of like evil person, and something about, she was this youngling that was corrupted by the dark side, and like there's some, Master Obi-Wan Kenobi in this moment somehow imparts like it takes her back to being a youngling and when things were good, and then she has this change of heart, and then she's like, okay, I'll help you kill him, or whatever. um that would have made it, I think that would have made her character more interesting and just been a
Yeah.
more believable turn.
It
And
it
yeah,
even been even better just because the fact that he had just met this girl and he can bring out the light in her, but he couldn't with Anakin, which it kind of sets more the fact even more so that Anakin wasn't his fault. You know what I'm
yes,
saying? Like,
yes,
which
yes.
that's important. I do think apparently lightsaber stabs just don't do anything.
I know, unless you're
I
a
mean,
Qui-Gon Jinn. uh,
that is movie logic where like, of course, bad guy gets shot, or
yeah,
once and dies, and good guy gets shot 5 times and survives. But
felt like it
I
was
still,
happening a lot though.
well, I mean, it is an issue when at this time you have the Grand Inquisitors who did not look great and then did not act
No,
cool. They looked and acted so weirdly and bad.
they looked
Um,
like they were just like they were like too
Cosplayers.
cool for school. You know what I mean? Like they had this like weird like, yeah, they did feel like cosplayers a lot. A
They sh-
lot
they
of
sh-
people in this show did.
yeah, they should be like the boogeyman. You know what I'm saying? They should have been like fucking
Yes,
scary.
yes. When
But when you
when one shows up, the streets clear. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Because everyone's so fucking afraid of him. Yeah.
exactly. And when you have, when you bring in like Riva and you have to like stab the Grand Inquisitor to like take him out to have her in there, even though like canon wise he's Grand Inquisitor. I mean, I get it, like that's a small period of time, it's like a day or two, but it still
Yeah.
feels like they're just making plot things. They're changing canon and making plot changes just to have her in this position of power, so she can be calling the shots, so these
Yeah.
other plot things can happen. Again, I do appreciate at least it doesn't work, but at least it made me feel a little better, even though the twist wasn't great, like in terms of how it was
Yeah.
executed. Like I did like I was okay with that. I was like, okay, well at least they're
Yeah.
doing this to kind of do something. Like at least Vader's not a total idiot, I guess, because it was like you're a
Right.
great.
Right.
I'm promoting you now. You're a Grand Inquisitor, and he's
Yeah.
it felt like Vader was dumb. At least it made him feel less dumb doing that kind of thing. Let's talk about
Yeah,
some of the things we
and his
love.
whole like thing at the end where he's like, "Well, I always knew you were alive. I remember. I felt you were alive back then at the temple. I just decided to let you live." You know what I mean? Which is like, why? You
Yeah,
killed everyone else, but you knew this girl was faking it, and you're just like, never mind. She's fine. I'll leave one alive. You know?
yeah.
I
Well,
mean, like,
yeah, exactly. It's weird. And, I understand that like there is the Clone Wars and there's Rebels and the Bad
yeah,
Batch and all these other extended canon kind of things. But I felt like there's always a difference between the live action stuff and the cartoon stuff in terms of the live action stuff is going to be watched by more people. It's going to be consumed more. I feel like they should have done
Yeah.
a better job of explaining or setting up the Grand Inquisitors, because if I was
Yes.
watching this for the first time and I had not watched or heard about them, whatever, I'd be like, "What the
Agreed.
fuck? Who
Agreed.
are these guys with these lightsabers?" And it's like it
Are
just
they
feels
Jedi? Are they dark Jedi? Like, and there's all this confusion. Like, I thought the rule of two was like a big thing in the Sith. So we're like, what the fuck are these guys doing? Like, are they
yes, and
like,
we know
like,
that kind of stuff, and that's great canon. Like, I mean, they're even in
yes,
Jedi Fallen Order, like that. They're a big part of that game,
yes, yes,
and like
and they're
all that.
really good in that.
They're really great in that. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, I get it. Like, there's extended canon, but you got to do certain things for whatever medium you're in for your audience. And I feel like that was also a
Yeah,
misstep. Let's talk about
100%.
some, before we get off here, let's talk about some of the good
Yeah,
things that we liked about the show. Um, I liked episode, I think it was, I mean, again, I found things I liked in all of them. I love that in 2 we were
yeah,
off Tatooine. I love the
yeah.
landscape. Well, there's another bad thing. I did not like Kamala Jolly's character. He was just a waste, and
No,
also he does not fit Star Wars at all.
no.
Like
He's just a comedian in a role, and he's still himself. He was
yeah,
just Camille Gianni in Star Wars. He was not playing a character. He's playing himself, and that
100%.
really pulls me out of the world.
Yes, like, I mean, I had Eternals on in the background yesterday while I was doing stuff, and I was like, this is just the same character I just saw in Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Yeah.
and it's just really weird, and like it's super weird because like Ian McGregor does not act like Obi-Wan or even sound like Obi-Wan Kenobi in real life, and
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
super weird.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I agree.
episode 4, I did like him having the lightsaber. I liked, if it was very New Hope, which people have issues with, but I liked, all that stuff for the most part. 5 was kind of a banger. I mean, even though there's issues with like her dying and that kind of stuff, like I had a good time with it. I love seeing Anakin, like the flashbacks, which should have been throughout the whole show. Like that's
They were okay
fantastic.
for me though. I guess I wasn't like I didn't feel like I feel like they could have done more with the flashbacks. It just felt like like they're sparring, and then Obi-Wan's like, remember, we only fight to defend. We never fight to like kill. And then they just keep sparring again. That was the meat of it, and I just feel
Yeah,
like that could have been more. I don't know. I
it
don't
could
know.
have been, but I guess maybe because like I'm latching on to anything I think could be good. I think there's
Yeah.
a path where you have these 6 episodes, and maybe every other episode, they could have even done stuff where they could have had a young Anakin Skywalker and had a
Yeah.
de-aged Obi-Wan, and like maybe those first moments
Yeah.
after Qui-Gon is dead, and like that even ties into
Yes.
Qui-Gon coming back and stuff like that, that like through their whole relationship,
Yes.
because we only saw, I mean,
One
the back
flashback.
end. Well, I mean, I'm talking about in episodes 2 and 3, there's a good chunk
Oh,
there where we don't have their relationship, right?
yes. Yes.
We could have
Yes.
touched on that a little bit. We could have had stuff,
It was all about Leia in those 2 episodes.
yes. And you know what I'm saying? Like we could have really dived into their relationship more and saw, because we got it in the movies, but we didn't get it.
Yes.
We could have got more because that's the best parts. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Like,
I
and
mean,
we could.
and the flashback was episode 2, I guess, because of Anakin's hair. And why didn't we get flashbacks? Because he's got the ponytail and it's short. Episode 3, he's got like long locks, like shoulder length hair.
Flash. Oh, you're
And I
talking
feel
about.
like
Oh yeah.
when they're sparring, it's an episode 2 era flashback.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Basically,
Yes, yes,
it's
yes.
happening somewhere around episode 2 just because of Anakin's hair. And I think, yeah, I agree. Why didn't we get flashbacks from all the eras? Like
Yeah,
that's not hard to do, and it would have been really, really cool. It would have been cool too one of the best things about Star Wars, the Clone Wars, is that it really fleshes out Anakin's descent
yes,
into the dark side. And I feel like that's something the prequels weren't great at. It felt like it was just like quickly happening. He just started murdering people, and then this, and then this. And I felt like we really got to see the progression of Anakin descending into like the darkness. And I think this would have been a great opportunity to show some of that on screen. You know what I mean? Fucking Ahsoka's in the world now. Why didn't we
or
have an Ahsoka like flashback with Anakin maybe? Or like, Ahsoka show's coming out soon. That would have been a great way to tease it. You know what I mean? Like,
have we see the good parts of Anakin, because we did see that stuff, but
yes,
to show the difference between him and Darth Vader when he's fighting Darth in the present day.
yes, that
That's
would
what
be great.
Yeah, we show the good stuff, like show him helping people and show him doing the thing, like that's because that's what he would be thinking about. Like, here's the person I knew,
Yes,
and then here's the person I'm dealing with now. And what did
Yes.
I do to cause
Yes.
that? And he didn't
Yes,
do
yes,
anything.
yes.
I mean,
That's exactly right.
he did do stuff. Obviously, the Jedi have a pretty bad religion,
But
but
it wasn't like him in particular. It was more like the
no.
system was broken,
Yes,
and he
exactly.
was a part of the system, and that is his role in it. But I think that's
Yes.
even so that it could have been like him coming to terms with that, him coming
Yes.
to terms with how he feels about what the Jedi were and what they did and like how they operated. Like that could have been a part of this discussion,
I
and
mean, one of my
everything. And
favorite
like,
things about The Last Jedi is Luke saying the Jedi
yeah,
were wrong. Like
yes,
it's
they
someone
didn't go
pointing
far
that
enough
out.
with it, but like, yes, I
Yeah.
completely agree. I think that idea, that plot point is critical
Yes.
to modern versions because it's like the Jedi were basically like Buddhist monks with like much stricter rules and laser swords. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and they were like just very strict, very rigid. You know what I mean? And like there's a great way, like the Jedi were an analogy for a lot of religious groups and a lot of like
Yeah.
religion. Like the Force is very analogous to like a deity in some ways. Like the Force, I mean, even the way they like flesh it out like later on
Yeah.
with the cartoons, it's like there's a consciousness behind the Force. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? There's some
Yeah.
sort of like awareness, and it has a will, it has a desire, whatever.
Well, I mean,
And
the
so
big
like,
thing that even like the current regime kind of fucked up, in my opinion. Like we got that with Luke in Last Jedi, but then by the end of the movie, he's like, the Jedi are returned, and then Rise of
and
Skywalker, it's
Ray
like I was
steals the
wrong.
books out of the burning room, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Well,
never
it's
mind.
like, yeah, well, it's like in Rise of Skywalker, he's like, well, I'm a Force ghost now, so now I'm kind of like all knowing, and I was wrong. You got to bring the Jedi back, and it's like, no, I mean, like
Yeah,
the reason why
no,
Luke saved the galaxy in number 6 is because he felt love and compassion, and he had his friends,
yes,
and he felt
yes,
love for his father, even though his father's done these horrible things to people, which is
yes,
anti-Jedi. Like it's
yes,
like he's literally like in the books he was a gray Jedi. He was someone
yeah,
in the middle. Like even in Book of
yeah,
Boba Fett, it felt like they were trying to set up this Luke that we had in Last Jedi, where he's like trying to
yes,
bring the Jedi back, and he's like kind of dogmatic again, and he's like
yes,
making Baby
yes,
Yoda choose. It's like, dude, Luke would never make Baby Yoda choose. He would be like,
right,
fucking wear your armor, and here's a goddamn lightsaber. Go save the
yes,
fucking galaxy.
yes,
Like that's
yes,
that's what's irritating on this kind of stuff.
yes, it
And
is.
we're
And
not getting paid to do this.
I
I'm
know.
sitting in my closet. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of going back to my final thoughts, I'm
Yes.
trying to give some positive ones because I've been very critical this episode.
Yes.
Um,
There are things
I
like
mean,
about it for
the
sure.
moment at the end with Vader and Obi-Wan and with half the mask sliced off, it was great. Like
Fantastic.
I wouldn't have that's like probably one of the one moments of the show where I wouldn't have changed anything or much.
Yeah.
You know, if I was in control.
Even his
And I
cadence, how it
really
was going back and forth between him and
oh
James Earl Jones. Like
yes,
I mean,
perfect.
I do like that lightsaber battle. I would have made it cooler. I wouldn't have shaky cam like
Yes.
they did because who fucking does
Yes.
that? But
Yes. There was a lot of that
but
this
I
show. There was a
know
lot of
like shaky
handheld
cam
camera, which to
does not
me
work for
feels like
Star
a
Wars.
budget decision, right? You do close up handheld camera. You don't have to do as many wide shots. You don't have to do as much production design. You know what I mean? Like
I guess
there's budget
so.
reasons to do that sometimes. And that's
Yeah.
what that this whole show felt like it was on a tight budget, which is weird. Um
Yeah, it is
yeah,
weird.
so I loved that moment at the end. I loved the lightsaber battle, and I did like seeing Qui-Gon. Like I was really happy we got to see Qui-Gon,
I
but
did say, yeah,
um,
boy, when he came on screen. I was pretty happy with that. Just because Qui-Gon's my favorite as a kid.
yeah.
He was.
It's just again, it's just that like throwaway where he's like, "You just couldn't see me yet. You just weren't ready." And like that's not tied to anything that happened in his. It's not like we oh yeah, Obi-Wan realized the only thing he realized was that it wasn't his fault that Anakin died or whatever, turned to Darth. Like that was the one like turn in the show for Obi-Wan where he thought this and now he thinks that or felt this way and now that way. And that to me is like, oh, so you just had to realize that it wasn't your fault. Now you can see Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
it took
So,
10
this is
years.
the problem. I try to get positive and then I end
Yeah.
up drifting into the critical again. And like, I
That's
don't
the
like that.
problem.
I wanted to love this show. Like this should have been my
agree.
favorite piece of Star Wars content maybe ever.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I think my expectations were high.
Yeah, I get. I think the 10-year thing is weird with like he didn't try to do it for 10 years. I mean, it seemed like he was trying, but that's a long time, 10 years to like not. I mean, it felt like, I mean, at the end of 3, it was like Qui-Gon's going to start training you right now. Like he's reaching out to you, and it's like, okay, so I guess it was 10 years later after. Actually, that's kind of weird.
Does he reach out? Does that happen at the end of episode 3?
The very end of 3, he's like, your old master's reaching out to you.
Yes, and they okay, but we don't see him. But but that quote is used in the very first episode when they do all these like montage of prequel scenes.
Yeah,
and then it's not paid off till the last shot of the show.
Yeah, Well, I think if they do a second season, that should be the show. Is like him and Qui-Gon doing things. But honestly, I feel like the way the show ended was kind of like they shouldn't do a second. I don't want a second season, really.
No.
It could be great, but I feel like if it's this season again, I don't want it. Because like at least this season, like it did tie a ribbon on some of the ideas. Like he tells Leia not to put their lives in jeopardy, which makes sense. Her call now to him. Even their connection, why she potentially even named her son after him. It shows it paints their Darth and Obi-Wan's conversation. It fixes the plot hole, even with like telling Luke, Anakin or Vader killed your dad. I mean, all those kind of things. It does work in that way. I don't think they should ever meet again. Like, it even says like, "Hey, Emperor Palpatine's in it," which was cool. Like, hey,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this explains why if he did know he was out there, it's like it's almost like a challenge to Vader. Like, if you're really bad, you won't go after him. And he's probably like, fuck, on the inside, like I want to go after him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway. We could talk about this forever. I know you got to get off here. Daniel, how can our listeners write into us?
Listeners, write into bit.ly/241mail. Let us know what you thought of Obi-Wan Kenobi, because every time I try to get positive, I get critical. that's unfortunate. But I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that liked it. So write into bit.ly/241mail. Tell us what you thought about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we'll read it on the show.
Yeah, and of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way, you're updated on all future episodes of the podcast 241. YouTube.com/241 Studios, the best place to consume the content. And you'll have the pod out every week. Of course, you can watch it first on the YouTube channel, and it will be up on all podcast services just a few days later, or maybe even day of, depending on how I feel. So,
indeed.
Thank you, Daniel. Of course, I feel like we're going to be talking about this show a lot more. I know we're kind of crunched for time this time.
It will come up in many other. I mean, I'm sure we'll reference it probably in all of our other discussions for the future Star Wars shows. So
I agree. I think we have Miss Marvel or The Boys or something, or Stranger Things Part 2 coming out next. So that's what we're doing next, everybody.
Yes.
So I'm excited for that. Daniel, go to your meeting. It was fun talking to you. My name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken. I should click this thing here. We have spoken.